without any further ado, we might as well get into this, right? Time skips. Let's do it.
Writers, it's so important to be able to skip time well, because if you don't, you might confuse the reader and they might just get bewildered and stop reading your book, or they might just get bored because you're including stuff that you really should be skipping over, but you're including in your book. So we're gonna go over 5 strategies that you can use when skipping time in your novel. Number 3 is probably my favorite, and number 5 is probably the most dangerous one. But let's start with number 1. Number 1 is using
date headers. This would be something that, like, I was considering using this in Cryogen to establish the exact length of time, but we never wound up doing that. But yeah, that makes sense.
Date headers. Basically, you have a chapter break or a section break, and then you pick it up months or years later, and you signal that by a header saying, oh, 4 years later, or 2 months later, or whatever it is. Now we're gonna start with a very extreme example. This one is from Neal Stephenson's Seven Eves. So there's a part in this book, and you can see it's about 2/3 of the way through the story, where you're just, reading along, everything's normal, and then you turn the page, and then you see this. 5,000 years later. Are you kidding me? I mean, really, Neal? Now, unless you're writing in certain genres, you probably are not going to have a 5,000 year time jump. But I do think the way he does it is extremely clear. Like, you're oriented right away. Okay, I guess this is 5,000 years later in the story. Now let's look at a slightly more commonplace example. This one is...
I know exactly how to do this. I know exactly how to do this. So, for the beginning of the second book, it's basically a lore dump in the form of a play. And it's like supposed to be inside the soulscape, like a dream state kind of thing. And it's Husai, the main character, sitting with the embodiment of Gaia and one of her crystal servants. And they're sitting basically in like an auditorium, and all the other characters from the book are dressed up and playing the characters in the play. And they're dressed in like high school quality costumes, like really shitty costumes basically, right? And it's like, since plays are a massive part of the story, it'll be explained throughout the first book, oh, these plays are extravagant because of the types of costumes, so it'll have like a scale of different plays of like, from good actors to bad actors, from good costumes to bad costumes, mixes in between, and like, like the great troupe of the era, which both Varius and Gluttony were a part of, like 30 years earlier. That's why, like, Varius is the Shakespeare of the time when it comes to, like, plays and songs, dances, and poems, basically. And at the beginning, it'll just be like, the creation of the universe. So we'll have like for instance, literally the timeline. Let's bring up where is it? Timeline. So we bring up the creation timeline, and we just be like, in the beginning there was only darkness. Darkness stirred restlessly, shift layers of reality, sunder. The soulscape is born, which is consciousness. Essence of consciousness pours from the soulscape. And then it's like, two types appear. Dark beings, main beings. With anima is created. And then it's like, here, Age of Peace, and it shows like the different time spans. So it's like 500,000 years later, and then it's like 5,200 or 524,000 years. So it's 24. So all of this is so between here and here is 20,000 years, and between here and here's 4,000 years. So you could have the characters in it literally say, 4,000 years later! And then it's like the scene draws to the next scene, right? With like the curtain rising and everything. Love amateur performances as an element of a story. Reminds me of the introduction for Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings movies. The animated one? Is that the one you're referring to, Levi? And welcome, Levi. Yeah, I've always wanted to do that, and very much so that, like, Gluttony is a great actor, but he can't sing. And Varius is a terrible actor, but he can sing. And it's that's like the basis of where I want to go with this. There'll be more nuance and stuff like that, but that's kind of the idea. So they have this banter back and forth because of the things that they can't do. Yeah, the animated one, mostly rotoscoped. Yeah. That was some good shit back in the day. But yeah. So that would be like the perfect place to do something like that.
Is from Normal People by Sally Rooney. And all of her chapters in this book are actually date headers. So here we see 3 months later, and then she gives the date of July 2012. Now, what's the advantage of a strategy like this? Well, for one, it is very clear, right? There's no missing. Oh, I know exactly in what time we are and how much time has elapsed. It's very unambiguous, and it lets the reader know right away where we are in time. But here's a general rule of how to do this well. The general principle is the longer the time break, the bigger the divide you have to make. So if you have a time break of like a day, well, you just need a section break from that, like 3 asterisks, right? You don't even need to have a chapter break. However, if you have a break of, say, a week or a month or something like that, usually that's big enough where you need to transition into a full-on chapter break. Now, what if you skip a lot of time, like a Neil Stevenson amount of time? Or let's say you're just writing like a family saga and you're skipping 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. Okay, then you need a part break. So this is bigger than a chapter break, and it's just like part 2 or part 3. And inside that part, you're gonna have a whole bunch of different chapters before you move on to the next part. Okay, so let's move on to the second great way to skip time in your novel.
All right.
Time markers in the text. This is James Runce's The Great Passion, and it is a historical novel about the life of Bach. In the first chapter, he is 37 years old and Bach has just died. But then when we get to the second chapter, we see this. It was the week after Easter in 1726, and it goes on from there. So what Runce's doing is expressing very clearly, okay, you know the time of year, it's the week after Easter, which is important because the whole novel is going toward the next Easter. And then 2, you know the year. So we know that we've skipped back in time and now he's a kid now and no longer an adult. And this tells the story of when he's going to meet Bach for the first time. Or for another example of time markers actually in the text, check out The Complete Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi. Now what's fun about this is that it's a graphic novel. I don't highlight a lot of graphic novels in this channel, but I don't know, maybe I should, you tell me. And what's happening here is there is a child in Iran and she is narrating her experience of the Iran-Iraq war. And there's a chapter break, and then the next section starts. The war had been going on for 2 years. We were used to it. So this one doesn't have a date, but it lets you know where in time you are by reference to the big thing that's going on, the war. Now, my piece of advice with this is don't be afraid to be obvious. Some people, when they're writing, they're like, ooh, like, I don't want to come out and just like say what I'm trying to say. Time markers are really a
Sometimes you just need to.
when you should be as blatantly obvious as possible. This is your chance. Just say when it is so the reader knows. Now, some of you might ask, okay, can I like wait for a paragraph to mention like what time it is and have like an intro paragraph and then talk about it? I think that in general, this is usually a bad idea to do because however long you wait, the reader is going to be confused about when this story is taking place until you tell them when it's taking place. Do you want to leave the reader confused for a paragraph? I mean, if you do, then try it out. But 90% of the time, I think it's usually best to just start with that first sentence saying, here's where you are in time, dear reader. Dear reader, like I'm some sort of, I don't know, uncle reading to the nephews or something. But if you want an example of an exception, I'll actually show you one where the time marker doesn't come until the second sentence. And this is by Alice Munro, The Progress of Love. And I actually don't have a copy of that book, so I'm gonna read the excerpt from this book, which is about how to use time in fiction. It's from Grey Wolf Press. It's absolutely fantastic if you want to check it out, but let me read that excerpt. I got a call at work, and it was my father. This was not long after I was divorced and started in the real estate office. So what is she doing here? The very first sentence is the inciting incident. Oh, I got this phone call from my father, and we're wondering, okay, what's gonna happen? And then she steps back a second and says, okay, here's where I am in time. Here's what's going on in this situation. I was recently divorced. I had recently started in a real estate office. But as a general principle, the longer you go without telling the reader where in time they are, the more confused they will be. Now, I know that some of you might be really angry with me right now because I just used an Alice Munro example. If you guys don't know the recent controversy, Alice Munro recently died, and it came out after her death that her daughter was abused by her husband and she had kept this a secret. So understandably, a lot
that
of people
doesn't affect her
struggle to read
literature
her
at all.
in the same way.
I hate things where it's like the person affects the art. Like, no matter what the reality is, Michael Jackson's music will be played for thousands of years if human civilization lasts. He will forever be an icon at the level of, like, Elvis Presley. Like, world-renowned, insane. Nobody cares what actually happened in real life. His music's fucking amazing. That's all that matters. So I hate when people get fixated on the person behind the art. It's like, is the art good? Okay, I don't care who the fuck wrote it. Like, I love Lovecraft. Everyone knows he was fucking racist as shit. Doesn't fucking... Michael Jackson is definitely more iconic than Elvis. I would say worldwide, definitely Levi, but probably not... Well, maybe. Let's look at name only like one or two Elvis songs. Well, I'd say like for the generation, right? Like Elvis was like the older generation. The newer generation would be Michael Jackson, and despite anything anyone wants to say, probably the newest generation, like K-pop. Somewhere in there. It's like a fight between like K-pop and like Japanese anime songs. But it's like K-pop is so unbelievably popular worldwide. It's actually, I think it'll be the first time a non-English speaking, like, native language, whatchamacallit? I hate that it turns Drake into an emote. Oh, because of the capital? That makes sense, yeah. Just the way, the function behind how emotes work. It is what it is, right? But yeah. But I think, yeah, definitely book buyer. K-pop is, I think, the first, like, on that level. Capitalizing on instinct. Yeah, it makes sense, Levi.
She's been cut from a lot of syllabi, and really her whole legacy is in question. So I guess...
But yeah, again, I hate how people put the person above the art. No one gives a fuck about the person. People just give a fuck about the art. BTS's some number ones on the Billboard's top 100. Oh, I believe it. I believe it, but they are... And, like, what's crazy about it, too, Book, is how small South Korea is. And it's, like, how prominent, not just BTS, but K-pop in general, is a worldwide fucking phenomenon. Like, they fucking listen to it everywhere. It's just... And it's, like, it's such a huge part of Korean culture, too. Like... It's actually in, like, it's insane what they do to their fucking models and stuff like that. Like, it's kind of fucked up, right? Only really know one K-pop band, and that's Blackpink. See, I don't know songs, titles, and I don't know bands. I just know music. You play the music, and I'll be like, fuck yeah, that's a banger. But, like, I can't name shit. I'm terrible names. We're influencing them as well. There are more and more English songs being released. Yeah, that's why I was like, wait, well, they do have English songs, so I was like, more of a non-English native speakers, right? That are, like, blowing up to the level that a lot of like Western and European countries have blown up worldwide, like the Beatles, for instance. Like, you know, just it's so cool to see it coming out on such a scale from smaller countries around the world.
Why am I using her as an example in this video? I think it's because my general principle is I want to divide the work from the person.
Yes.
You don't have to be a good person for us to learn from your writing. You don't have to be a good person for me to even enjoy your books. And so what I'm trying to do in all these videos is try to teach you the best way to write, even if the author happened to be a morally dubious person. However, if you can't get past the fact of what she did in her personal life, then I mean, I completely understand that.
Yeah,
Like,
I understand where you're coming
get
from.
that.
I'm not
However,
on your
if
side.
it's really
but
necessary, like if I am
all the members of BTS get back from military this year. Sadly, not in time for Fiesta, though. See, I always wondered how that was going to affect them, because it's one of those things where it's like everyone, it's almost like a hype moment. Everyone knew it was going to happen. They didn't know how it was going to happen, if they were going to do like one member at a time and just have a replacement, if they were all going to go at the same time and do a hiatus, and anything about it. So it's like when the moment comes, it's going to be fucking huge for them to come back. It's like, it's going to be crazy.
talking about time, Alice Munro is really...
It's just like Flash coming back and Soma coming back in StarCraft. It's going to be fucking insane. So it's like, I don't, you know, hate on the military service because it's taken away our players. I think of it more as it's given us time to sit back, soak up, and have a new need for them, right? Like, it's all going to be fresh again.
A master of handling time in fiction. So I felt like I needed to include her in this video, but I also needed to explain, like, I'm not ignoring or excusing the fact of what she did. Okay,
True.
onward.
See, that you can acknowledge it as well without having it affect it, right? And I think acknowledgement is important for that. That's not true. They have distinct concepts. Go. I think you gotta have a distinct aesthetic to be iconic in the way MJ and Elvis are. I couldn't tell any K-pop groups apart since they're all going for modern take on Backstreet Boys. Plus, Backstreet Boys were pretty much only pop. K-pop is a variety of genres. Yeah, it's a very mixed... It's like, I think of K-pop as like MMA for music. Like, we call it K-pop, but like it isn't exclusively, because pop culture in Korea is a lot different. Levi, it's because the expansion of pop culture in Korea is like a lot wider of a category than it is in a lot of other places. And they consider some types of genres more pop than anything else, because it's like, I'd say it's almost like a Western influence on the idea of Westerns. Like, you know, like cowboy music, right? Like Elvis would be like a Western style artist, right? I get that the term is derived from J-pop, but we've got J-rock and J-rap, so they don't really have a word for K-rap or K-blues, etc. Yeah, I think it's more of a cultural thing. It's just that it's such a phenomenon. And what's crazy about this is, as far as I know from StarCraft and from other esports and from like Artosis and Tasteless, like living in Korea and knowing about the culture and stuff, like they really don't have a good concept culturally on like a brand name. So for K-pop exploding globally, it's like one of the main instances of them completely changing their use of language in order to maintain a like status quo bubble, right? So it's like a universality. Everyone knows when you say K-pop what you're talking about, whether you're actually talking about pop music. You're literally just saying Korean music, but instead it's just a fancier and catchier way of saying Korean music, right?
Enough of that. Let's move on to 3 situational clues. Let's look at Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. Now, in the first 5 chapters of this book, we have this pandemic that's spreading across the entire world. And actually, yes, this did come out before COVID. But there's a massive time skip between chapter 5 and chapter 6. Now, how does she handle it? I'll tell you what she doesn't do. She does not have a chapter heading with the time. As you can see here, it just says 6. And she also doesn't use time markers in the text. She doesn't say 20 years later, blah, blah, blah. Instead, she gives us these situational clues to let us know, oh, hey, a huge portion of time has passed since the previous chapter. And the way she does this is through a list of what we...
It's extremely common to have both singers and rappers in a group as well as dancers. Yeah, it's a very, like I said, it's very, very much like MMA in that way. Like, they take the best components and they formulate it together to create a structure that works within the boundaries of those, like, the best premises from each genre kind of thing, right? And then that gives them more reach, right? Because they can have each member have their own specific, like, main genre that they work with, and then they have the subgenre they work off of the others with. So it's like a synergy that allows you to switch between it, and that gives you, like, a very special, like, key. Because it's really hard to do something like that because it can fuck with the audience, right? But the way that they've built it up and the way that they are just kind of gives this nuance to experimental type music where people see it and they go, oh, this is out of the box. So they're not expecting like this conformed style where I say, like, if you're talking like in the West, like a boy, you know, a pop boy band, like, you're getting a very specific, very narrow type of thing when you're thinking, like, Western boy band, right? BTS is a good example. RM and Suga were recruited because they were underground rappers. Jimin and J-Hope were recruited because they're dancers. Jin was recruited for his face, but he's a fantastic singer. And Jungkook is the golden... Maknae, he is good at everything. V was the wild card. Yeah, but you always got to have something to offset the rest of the group, right?
We no longer have in this post-pandemic world. No more chlorinated pools. No more baseball games. No more porch lights. No more trains. So those are sort of small things, and then she works her way up to larger things. No more flights. No more countries and no more borders. No more fire departments. No more police. I think this is both very clear and more subtle than our...
Jungkook is the only name I recognize from that list. That's sad, but understandable. Yeah, like I said, I don't know any of the names. And I know a lot about them, but I just don't remember names well. I think it just has something to do with, like, my seizures or something like that. I've just, like, in the last 10 years, I'm just fucking horrid with names. Names just don't stick in. It's like I have too many names from my book that, like, my brain... Jin is our age of talks. I can never tell. I couldn't tell if they were like, have you seen? Oh, I wonder if I can find it. Nah, I can't find it, but like it's basically a video of like a bunch of dudes that are like basically like completely bald, right? And you can tell these dudes are like 45 or whatever, right? And then they put on a wig, and then they take the picture, and it's like they instantly look like they're like 23 or 24. It's just like the hair loss just makes them look so much older. 1992 baby, elderly. For K-pop, yes, most are in their teens, early 20s for a living human. Man's basically in the fossil record. They've been around for 11 years and a few days. It's their anniversary. Damn,
First
that's
two strategies
insane.
as a way of telling the reader, oh hey, guess what? A lot of time has passed. So in your novel, I want you to think about places where you can skip through time really fluidly by just giving situational clues. And I'm gonna give you a couple of examples.
One of the ways we could definitely skip time is saying that, Beastmen villages have emptied out. For some reason, all the Beastmen have disappeared. Right? Every village we go to is empty. Most groups last about 1 to 4 years on average. Yeah, like they age out, or they're too specific in a genre, and like that genre like dips in popularity. They dip in popularity, and then a new thing shoots out. Right. The good thing BTS has is they have the maneuverability or controversy. Yeah, one of them gets a girlfriend, and all of a sudden, their whole lives are over.
Examples of that. For instance, let's say you have your characters going on a trip. The end of one chapter can be them deciding to go on a trip, and the beginning of the next chapter could be them arriving. And what you just skipped.
Or the burning something scandal. One of them gets caught with a joint. Yeah, something like that. Some sort of stupid fucking retarded thing, right?
There's all the boring travel parts in the middle, if they are boring, right? If something actually happened during the travel, then okay, fine, include that. But if nothing exciting happened, just skip right to the arrival and the reader will sense the amount of time that has passed. Another great example would be a pregnancy. Say the end of one chapter is a character discovering they are pregnant. The beginning of the very next chapter can be them actually having the baby. Now you know exactly how much time has passed without explicitly saying it. Another example, let's say
Burning Sun scandal? No idea what that is.
at the end of one chapter, a character gets a wound. And in the beginning of the next chapter, you mention that wound is now healed. We get a sense of the weeks that must have elapsed.
Should read about it sometime? Maybe, if I ever have time. I barely have time to do what I need to do. Oh, I forgot to mention, today's going to be another short stream because I work early again tomorrow. Yay!
For that wound to heal. You don't need to say, 3 weeks later, Now, the absolutely crucial part in this whole idea of skipping time in your fiction is knowing what parts to skip, right? If you don't know that, then you're sunk. These techniques won't help you at all. And the general principle is so easy to understand, it almost seems dumb for me to say, but I'm gonna say it anyway. You want to slow down time and focus on...
Burning Sun scandal, also known as the Burning Sun Gate, was a 29 entertainment and sex scandal in Seoul, Korea, which involved several celebrities, including Korean idols, and K-pop groups, and police officials. Oh, was it like, like also including, like, female, celebrities as well? Yeah. I think I heard about that. Something to do with that cult thing. I don't know. They're like how do you put this? Like fanatical in a sense. You could call it cultish, right? It's like Taylor Swift following or something like that, right? It's almost cult-like.
On the most exciting parts, and anything that's boring, you skip it. So what that means is if you're coming to a part in your fiction and you're like, man, this scene just isn't working, I'm trying to write it and it just feels boring when I write it and it feels boring when I read it, that might be a good sign that maybe you should skip that whole scene entirely and find a way to start up the story once that scene is done. All right, let's get to our fourth strategy of how to skip over time in your fiction, and it is use
summary.
Summary. So when you use summary, basically what you do is you take a couple sentences or maybe a paragraph and you
So they're just completely two separate things.
Just show the passing of time. And what you're doing is you're compressing, say, a couple weeks or a couple months or a couple seasons, and you're just compressing it.
And that's what I'm doing in Cryogen, is we're compressing the summary of how long he's slept in Cryogen before he wakes up, how many trips he's taken, how long surmised those entirety trips have been, right? Yeah, I was looking up my thing. There was a huge political scandal. Makes sense, because, like, K-pop and musicians in Korea are like on the same level as like Hollywood celebrities in the West. Because Korea just doesn't have as large or as prominent like a film scene, but their music scene is insanely strong.
Inside a single paragraph. And for an example of this, we're going to go back to an old childhood favorite of mine, Lord of the Rings by Tolkien. Specifically, the Fellowship of the Ring, the first one in the trilogy. And this is after Gandalf has told Frodo...
Oh, you want to know something funny about this? I thought this was hilarious. This is what's wrong with the world. Or I guess America. The one big beautiful bill passed by the House on May 22nd is reported to be 1,116 pages long. The complete novel comprising Fellowship of the Ring, Two Towers, and Return of the King is typically around 1,137 pages. This bill is literally the length of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Like, I think that's kind of fucking retarded. Who the hell is going to sit down and read a Lord of the Rings length fucking bill? Yeah, I was looking at, I think I'm revealing too much at once in my third chapter. Well, you can always go back and cut things out, right, book? But having it in subtext or context in the back of your head as to, like, building on something where we'll get a wet spot from it.
The history of the ring, and then Gandalf disappears for a bit. So he basically talks about the Shire having a really fair summer, a wonderful autumn, trees laden with apples, honey dripping in the combs, corn tall and full. I mean, you just get the sense of, oh, here.
Yeah, true. True, book.
Here's time passing. Autumn was well underway before Frodo began to worry about Gandalf again. September was passing, and there was still no news of him. So in a mere, say, 3 sentences, we've just moved through a good 4 or 5 months, and done so really easily. So the question is, why would you do it this way? Why not just omit this part of the story entirely and then start up again when, I don't know, there's action happening, like you would with date headers or the situational way? And I think this is really a question of style. What this does is it gives your book a sort of easygoing flow to it. It feels very gentle. There are no sharp, rough...
Slight frustration. 2016, then President Park Geun-hye was a member of a cult called the Church of Eternal Life. Now the question is, Levi, what does the cult believe? Because I mean, I don't really care if you're part of a cult, as long as that cult isn't like human sacrifice, sex trafficking, and like indoctrination from birth. All the bad things. But it's like, like I consider like a lot of religions to be a cult. So, syncretic cult, it's a fusion of Buddhism and Presbyterianism. Yeah, see, Levi, that seems almost reasonable. Where it's like I said, like religion and politics in and of themselves have like very strong pull to cultist type shit. Like the fact that people are like so like people on the left are so against people on the right. It's like the people on the left are a fucking cult and the people on the right are a fucking cult. And the people in the middle are just fucking normal.
Or sharp breaks. It feels like a river of narrative. And if that's the feeling that you're going for, then maybe this is the right strategy for you. But I'd also like
some shady stuff in service of the cult and got impeached, then imprisoned for a few years. I mean, sounds fair if like they're breaking the laws and doing shit like that, right? Then you can't blame them for that, right?
to say that you can use this strategy not just for long periods of time, but you can also use it for shorter periods of time. This is a Margaret Atwood novel, Oryx and Crake, and we have a section where there's actually just a very, very short skip of time at the beginning of a chapter. He'd waited for her, at first with impatience, then with anxiety, then panic. It shouldn't take them that long to make a couple of pizzas. So what amount of time is being skipped over here? Maybe 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes? And the reason why she includes this is we're feeling his anxiety, like, okay, something's going wrong. They're not coming back. So at any point in your story, if you're trying to write a scene and it feels boring to you, transition, try to write it as summary, try to speed up that time, cover that time in say 2 or 3 sentences, and you might find it works much, much better to get the reader back to the more exciting parts. Okay, now it's time for our final strategy for how to skip time. It is number 5. Don't mention the time jump at all. So I mentioned at the beginning that I thought this was the most dangerous of all the techniques, and that's because the danger is that you're going to confuse the reader. Now the difference between this and number 3, the situational way, is I think this is much less direct. It's a
That's okay, book. I feel you. You're just expressing yourself. Feel free. Don't ever feel like you gotta hold back. This channel ain't about holding back. This channel's about going big all day. Just expressing my feelings. It's all good, book. No worries.
More subtle. You don't even try to really give a bunch of clues.
But try something more like...
Drums fingers on tables faster and faster, hard and harder, building momentum until it breaks and I slam my fist on the table.
Try that. It feels better to express in a physical action your emotion than it is to express the simple emotion itself. You're like, fucking goddamn it, versus like, I'm upset, right? Bangs head over and over again on wall. Oh, you guys know what we need. Actually, I'm doing this right fucking now. So we're gonna go to Botrix, and we're gonna go to Kick. And we're gonna go to Chatbot. We're gonna go to Commands. We're gonna grab one of our EMs. Okay, it is just that. We're gonna add. We're gonna go here, and we're gonna go this. Okay, let's try it. Hell yeah! There we go. Smash your head on that fucking table. Punches brain, kicks wall. I love it. Yes, that's the way to do it. That's the way to do it, book. Get it out!
That a bunch of time has passed. Now, why would you do this? I don't know. Maybe you're writing a more experimental book, which is trying to say something about the nature of time itself. Or maybe you're writing a time travel book, and your point is that time doesn't really matter. I don't know what it could be, but you could have ulterior reasons for not orienting the reader. And then also, there are some books that don't require time jumps at all. I think of pretty lengthy books that take place entirely in one day. Books like Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf, The Hours by Michael Cunningham, or Ulysses by James Joyce. Now, I include this last strategy is really not trying to orient the reader to the time jumps, just as a way to let you know, like, yeah, you can break rules. It's okay to break rules. So the first 4 things I taught you are very definite ways to skip time. But if you don't want to follow any of those, okay, take a stab at writing something a little more experimental and try to confuse the reader a little bit. Then your book becomes a type of puzzle, where part of the puzzle is figuring out, all right, what time is this? How are we shifting through time? Are we back in time? Are we forward in time? Forcing the reader to kind of be a detective and deduce what time they're in is a perfectly fine way of writing a book if that's the type of book you're trying to write. Okay, I hope that helped you. Please click that like button, please.
First two were decent, this one is hard. Well, the good thing about that book is the next one, you'll learn a lot from this chapter. The harder the chapter is to write, and the more you spend on the harder chapter, it'll make the other chapters easier. Not that you're not going to ever find a harder chapter than chapter 3, but it's like, you know, when you do find that hard chapter, just think of it as like, all right, this is the big one getting out of the way. So all we got to do is get over this hurdle, and the next 4 should be super easy, right? That's how I think about it. I think it's because I don't have a plot. I need more plot planning. I mean, that's fair, book. If Sean's in here, which I haven't seen him, but hey, you know, he's always here, so I'm going to say it.